Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dushtarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaksha Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Bande Sri Guru Dharitarinam Yatkripatamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam Sri Caitanya Ishwaram Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Vishkaram Sutaram Bhave Vismrite Viparitam Syat Sri Caitanyam Namami. Okay, Rudradeep Nimai Prabhu, please kindly share screen. We are where are we actually? While inspecting, correct? When yeah, we were at that place where Prabhupada's title. Prabhupada received the title Prabhupada. Before that, he was called Swamiji, and there is an explanation of that in the Back to Goddess magazine. Okay. Any volunteers to read today? I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Madhuri.
Yeah. So we start with when inspecting, is it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Prabhu. I will start. When inspecting the living accommodations for the devotees, Prabhupada found spacious, white canvas tents, one for the men and one for the women, with fluorescent lighting inside. A large pandal tent stood in the center of the other tents, and a small tent in the rear served as a kitchen. Immediately surrounding the small compound were rice fields. The ground, therefore, was slightly moist, and the wet fields bred large mosquitoes, which emerged at sunset. Conditions were primitive, but many of these devotees were the same disciples who had traveled with Prabhupada for a year and a half in India, sometimes living in dirty dharamshalas with bare rooms, and sometimes living in cold tents in Allahabad. The devotees had not come to Mayapur to be comfortable, but to serve Prabhupada. In future years, by the result of their efforts, many devotees would be able to gather comfortably in Mayapur in the spacious buildings Prabhupada was planning. Well aware that Westerners were unaccustomed to the austerities of living in India, Prabhupada wanted to provide facilities so his disciples could feel comfortable and be able to focus their stay in India on spiritual life without distracting inconveniences. Therefore, he was pushing them to help in various ways to establish a Mayapur building with running water, electricity, and other conveniences. Prabhupada's dwelling was a simple thatched Bengali hut, about 12 feet square, with a dirt floor. A thin partition divided the main room from the servants' quarters. In front was a small veranda, and in the back a garden where Prabhupada could sit and take massage. Also in the back were a hand pump for bathing and an outhouse. When the devotees apologized for offering Prabhupada such a humble residence, he replied that he liked the natural simplicity. Even if you build me the biggest palace, he said, still I would prefer to live here. While living so simply in Mayapur, Prabhupada spoke of his vision of a grand project yet to come. Although the deities of Radha Madhav, whom he had worshipped at the 1971 Ardha Kumbh Mela in Allahabad, were installed in a tent, he spoke of a marble palace. He also spoke of first-class accommodations for guests and devotees, although as yet he had little to offer. Living simply and happily in his thatched hut, he gathered his disciples together and told them of his plans. At his request, devotees had built a small model of the proposed first major building, and there were also drawings of the proposed temple of human understanding. He wanted to build a Mayapur city, he said, with quarters for each of the four social classes of the Varnashram institution. Tatpara. When Prabhupada would go to the Western countries, he would be interviewed by many great persons. But when he came to Mayapur, he was talking so friendly, sometimes taking juice or giving instructions, and he lived simple, like a villager. The Western devotees think sometimes of Prabhupada in one Leela only, like a great king. But when he comes to India, he is like another person. He was laughing and talking like a friend. Bhavananda. In his straw house, Prabhupada sat on a bamboo platform. There was a bed and some mats on the floor. That was all. He was happier here than anywhere. We put a fan in there too, and Prabhupada liked it. He liked it because it was so simple. There was an outhouse, but he didn't mind it at all. He was relishing everything. At that time, he made Jayapataka and me co-directors of Mayapur. He made 4 signers on the checking account for the building construction. In India, just to open up an account is very difficult. We were seeing that part of Prabhupada where he was very strict because he knows the difficulties you can run into. If you don't fill out the paper forms, the bank can even keep your money. Or you may want to close your account and they won't let you. Our mood was played out. We were babies. So Prabhupada was training us in keeping accounts and management. Jananivas. The first time Prabhupada came to see the deities, he said, "Who's dressing the deities?" Someone said, "Jananivasa." The deities were just standing on a tile platform with no decoration. They were just standing there, but Prabhupada looked at them so lovingly. He used to come and take darshan every day. One time he came to the deity room and I wasn't there. There were some Indian people taking darshan and I had gone to get them a Back to Godhead magazine from a room about 10 feet away. When I came back, Prabhupada was there. He was also taking darshan, but he said, "You should always be standing here. People are coming, but no one is here." I said, "Srila Prabhupada, I just went to get a Back to Godhead. It is only 10 feet away." But he looked at me as if to say, "You are defending yourself again, making excuses." Then he told Bhavananda, "This boy, Jananivas, should have some help. He can't do everything. He's an ordinary person." The 5-day God Purnima festival featured 24-hour kirtans with groups of devotees chanting in 2-hour shifts. Each morning, the main body of devotees would perform a kirtan procession and go out visiting Navadvip's holy sites. The neem tree under which Lord Caitanya was born, the house of Srinivasacharya, where Lord Caitanya and his associates had performed nocturnal kirtan. The spot where the Kasi...
That is an error. That's Srivas Thakur, it's not Srinivasacharya.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
The spot where the Qazi had tried to stop Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan, the residence of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Often Bhaktivinoda Thakur had stood in front of his house. Prabhupada told the devotees and looked out across the Jalangi towards where Srila Prabhupada now had his land. Throughout, Throughout the day and especially in the evening, the devotees would gather on the stage of the orange striped pandal while Radha Madhav stood at stage center. within a traditional Bengali simhasan of carved banana stalks covered with colored foil and flower garlands. Prabhupada would have his disciples do most of the public speaking with Achyutananda Swami lecturing Bengali as the main speaker. Hundreds of people came and went in a steady stream, and the devotees distributed Bengali, English, and Hindi Back to Godhead magazines. In the evenings, they would present a slideshow or a film. Prabhupada was especially pleased to watch the prasadam distribution from his window. Hundreds of villagers squatting in long rows, eating khichdi from round leaf plates. Continue this forever, Prabhupada told his disciples. Always distribute prasadam. Even without a building, Prabhupada's preaching in Mayapur was significant. While other nearby mathas were also observing Gaura Purnima, mostly by hosting Calcutta widows who paid, hosting Calcutta widows who paid a fee to live a few days in a temple and visit the holy places of Navadvip. Prabhupada's Pandal program was the most vigorous celebration and drew the most visitors. The birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prabhupada said, had no meaning without preaching. Except for this time of the year, very few people visited Mayapur. Which is more important, Prabhupada asked, Lord Chaitanya's birthplace or his activities? It is his activities, his karma. His activities are more important than his janma or place of birth. The activities of Lord Chaitanya were chanting Hare Krishna and distributing love of God to all people. And this should be the activity of devotees in Mayapur. On Gaura Purnima day, 10 of Prabhupada's sannyasi godbrothers visited to participate along with Prabhupada's disciples and hundreds of visitors in the dedication and cornerstone laying ceremony. Prabhupada was gracious and friendly towards his godbrothers, and he was gratified that they could all sit together to dedicate the world headquarters of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Sitting on a cushion next to the sacrificial arena, chanting on japa beads, Prabhupada initiated 6 Bengali devotees and awarded the sannyasa order to a young American disciple. Then Prabhupada's godbrothers spoke, each expressing appreciation of Prabhupada's work in the West. Finally, they all gathered around the pit, 5 feet square and 15 feet deep. Certain articles had been collected to be placed inside the pit in accordance with the scriptures. 5 kinds of flowers, 5 kinds of grains, 5 kinds of leaves, 5 kinds of metal, 5 kinds of nectar, 5 kinds of color, 5 kinds of fruits, and 5 kinds of jewels. Prabhupada's godbrother, Puri Maharaj, descended a ladder into the pit to put coconuts and banana leaves in a pot and to place this along with flowers into the altar of bricks. Next, Prabhupada entered the pit carrying a box with a gold ruby-eyed murti of Anantasesha. Earlier that morning, in his heart, Prabhupada had confidentially shown a few disciples the murti. This is Lord Ananta, he had said, the serpent bed on which Lord Vishnu rests. He will hold the temple on his head. Prabhupada now placed Anantasesha on the altar of bricks and climbed back up the ladder. Then, on Prabhupada's blissful invitation, everyone began to toss in offerings of flowers and money, followed by handfuls of earth. Although Prabhupada's godbrothers had praised his work on Gaura Purnima day, several of them returned a few days later to complain about his use of the title Prabhupada. Prabhupada asked his disciples to leave the room. When they were alone, one of the sannyasi godbrothers began challenging Prabhupada in Bengali. Why are you using Prabhupada? You have no right. This is our Prabhupada's title. You cannot take it. I did not take it, Prabhupada replied. They are calling me Prabhupada. What can I do? Although the sannyasi godbrothers then began to criticize Prabhupada for not joining their preaching and for awarding the sacred thread and sannyas order to Westerners, Mainly, the God brothers wanted an explanation for his use of the title Prabhupada. Brahmananda Maharaj, Prabhupada called, bring me a copy of my letterhead. When Brahmananda Swami returned with the stationery, Prabhupada showed it to his God brothers. The letterhead read, Tridandi Goswami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. No Prabhupada. This proved that he himself did not use the title. The simple demonstration pacified his God brothers. He then invited them to take prasadam with him while the disciples served. Later in his heart, Prabhupada talked with his disciples about envy. A devotee could judge his own advancement by how free he was from envy, he said. In the spiritual world, envy was conspicuous by its absence. Although all the liberated associates of Krishna were trying their best to serve Krishna in a kind of competition, everyone was pleased with one another. If Radharani or a favorite gopi pleased Krishna, the other gopis did not think ill of her, but thought, oh, how nicely she has served Krishna. Let me try to offer some nice service to Krishna, so he will be even more pleased. To be envious was materialistic. Prabhupada wished his god brothers had taken a different point of view. He wished they had not minded his being called Prabhupada by his disciples. He was also sorry that some of his god brothers couldn't sincerely praise his work. If Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was working successfully through him, why should they be disturbed? Why not accept his work and be happy that the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was being spread effectively? They should see it as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's work, the work of their own spiritual master. It was also their work, their responsibility. And they should recognize that through Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, it was being wonderfully done. At the ceremony, they had praised his work. So, if they didn't mind praising him, then why not admit that for hundreds of listeners whom he had saved from hell, he was Prabhupada, the singular pure devotee, whom they always thought of as seated at the lotus feet of Krishna. In terms of authorized books produced and distributed, numbers of devotees initiated and engaged in devotional service, the numbers of temples opened, no one could compare. Of course, in one sense, all of Prabhupada's god brothers were equally praiseworthy as long as they followed the basic instructions of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, chanted Hare Krishna, and avoided sinful life. But if analysis or criticism was to be made with such scrutiny, then let the preaching records be scrutinized. Who, above all, was extending the mercy of Lord Nityananda and making such tremendous gains on behalf of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, gains that had previously seemed impossible. According to Chaitanya Charitamrita, if a preacher could spread the chanting of Hare Krishna, then he must be accepted as empowered by God. Prabhupada was certainly empowered, yet he conducted himself very humbly, with no assistance from others. He had repeatedly invited his god brothers to join him in the West and take their places beside him as preachers in the Krishna consciousness movement. Why had they not come forward to assist him in their spiritual master's mission? Instead of complaining about him, the one god brother who was carrying out Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's mission. It was not the place of Prabhupada's disciples to criticize, however, and he had sternly warned them that they had no position to do so. They should treat his god brothers as disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and therefore as on the level of their own spiritual master. Nevertheless, Prabhupada's disciples became sorry to see this lack of respect for their spiritual master. They could be humble and not protest, but how could they be affectionate towards persons who criticize their spiritual master and his Krishna consciousness movement? After the 5-day festival, Prabhupada left Mayapur for Vrindavan, where he planned to hold another groundbreaking ceremony. The Mayapur land was still completely undeveloped, and Prabhupada urged his disciples in India to continue collecting the necessary funds. We are making a very gorgeous plan at Mayapur, and if you all together can give shape to this plan, it will be unique in the whole world. It will be a world center for teaching spiritual life. Students from all over the world will come, and we shall revolutionize the atheistic and communistic tendencies of rascal philosophers. So we must be responsible for this great task. Not a single moment not for a single moment shall we be without ISKCON thoughts. That is my request to you all. February 1972.
Adi, you can just pause for a few minutes.
Yes,
okay. Humility does not mean okay, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Prabhupada defines humility as that one should not be anxious to get recognition from others or appreciation from others. You know, so it was not Prabhupada who was eager about using the name Prabhupada. It were the disciples. So he was not eager to get the satisfaction of being honored by somebody else. You know, so humility does not mean that one does not accept the title at all. The central point of humility is one should not have the desire, but if the disciples so choose, that's what happened in Prabhupada. In the instance of the dealings with Prabhupada, it's the disciples who gave the name Prabhupada. Like they asked Prabhupada, what are generally the names by which the spiritual master is called, and then they chose Prabhupada. And Prabhupada just accepted the title. But it's not that he was anxious and he said, now you need to call me like this and things like that. So, but he continued, like in his letterhead, he showed his God brothers. He refers to himself as Siddhanta Goswami, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. But the Prabhupada title appears in his books. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. That he insisted that the proper way to, okay, once the spiritual master has been officially given a title, that title must be used consistently. So Prabhupada was very particular about being consistent in usages, being consistent in devotional service itself in general. That was more a matter of being consistent with usage. And also Prabhupada detected it when he saw that they refused to use the title. So they saw that was due to an envious mentality. So Prabhupada, that we already dealt with that section called a threat to ISKCON. That was in the 1970s. So Prabhupada, being a pure devotee, he's beyond the imperfections of the senses. So he could perceive the motives of devotees, perceive the motives of his followers. So when he saw a sincere motive, he encouraged them in that motive. So it was with a sincere desire that they called him Prabhupada. And Prabhupada encouraged him. It is not that he was the one who was pushing for it. So he accepted the title which they conferred upon him. And in the beginning we saw no, I'm just looking back. I thought I missed something here. we saw in the beginning how a pure devotee does not need any material circumstances, specific luxurious material circumstances to be satisfied and happy. So Prabhupada is very satisfied and very happy living in a very simple accommodation in Mayapur. So there are several devotees in the beginning we saw who recount how Prabhupada is very happy living in those simple conditions in Mayapur. So this is the inseparable quality of a pure devotee. They are not anxious to get comfortable living situations. In any situation, they are happy because they are focused on serving Krishna. So they're beyond the dualities of luxury and poverty and things like that. They are just any condition of life, they're just surrendered to the will of the Supreme Lord. Uh, and in this, we end this by where Prabhupada, this section ended where Prabhupada saying, not for a single moment shall we be without ISKCON thoughts. Now, in the modern day, uh, there are several devotees or that you may come across who say, no, institution is not good. I don't want to identify the institution and all these different things. But Prabhupada envisioned the institution as a vehicle to carry forward the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, and Prabhupada at times he said that ISKCON is my body, Lakshmi is my blood. So, he did consider the institution as essential part of spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. So we should not try to have a separatist mentality of thinking, no, we have got nothing to do with it. We've got nothing to do with the institution. Anyway, we are grahastas. So that kind of a separatist mentality should not be there. Rather, as we see in Jaipur, that for the Mangalarti of Sri Sri Radha Govinda, a lot of people from the throngs of people from the city of Jaipur turned up for Mangalarti, businessmen and workers and things. People are working in outside job, businessmen, everybody turns up for Mangalarti because Radha Govinda is the center. So Prabhupada created ISKCON as a vehicle for gathering together. ISKCON is a place where the whole world can live, so that devotees can come together, observe different festivals together, attend classes together, perform devotional service together. So we should also consider ISKCON as dear to us because it was personally crafted by Srila Prabhupada. Yes, it may not be perfect or there may be different things that need to be fixed. Which if we can fix some of it, let's do it. Even if we do not have the ability or the capacity to fix any of it, still let us be aligned with the institution because it's personally crafted by Srila Prabhupada. Let's not maintain any form of a separatist mentality. Any thoughts, reflections, or questions so far?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, madam.
Prabhu, have you heard anything beyond what Jananivas Prabhu states here? He says that when Prabhupada came, the deity did not have any decorations; they were just standing there. Has Jananivas Prabhu said anything more than that?
No. I mean, I've not heard anything more. Maybe, but I've not heard from him, or I've not come across anything else, specifically in regard to this. Actually, because in Mayapur, even to get milk was difficult. So Prabhupada, I think this comes up in the Leelamrita, or was it some other biography, where when Prabhupada arrives, he sees the living conditions and he begins to cry actually. So considering the situation in Mayapur, Prabhupada was pretty content at what standards existed. Of course, later on in time, they developed the standards to a much different extent, to a higher extent. But they were putting in sincere efforts to do the best, and Prabhupada appreciated it. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhu, one more thing I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Here it is mentioned that Srila Prabhupada wanted to build the quarters as per the Varnashrama Dharma, staff quarters.
Yes.
This is what I understood.
Yes.
So what does it
Yes.
mean, sir?
Okay. Very interesting question. Okay. So, Prabhupada envisioned that those performing Brahminical services would live together, those performing the Kshatriya services would live together. But Prabhupada envisioned it as Daivi Varnashrama community. Means that you cannot refer to somebody as a Brahmana Vaishnava or a Kshatriya Vaishnava or a Vaishya Vaishnava, Shudra Vaishnava. These are designations. Prabhupada is strictly against using such designations. Prabhupada just had one designation called, the transcendental designation of Vaishnava. Now, there may be different people who do different activities. And it's natural that when your tastes are similar, then you get along well. For example, two pujaris may have much more things in common, to speak in common, than somebody doing some other service. So Prabhupada envisioned, like for example, although you're not living in India, but you seem to be of Indian origin. So if you have visited some places, especially in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, that there are entire villages, not villages, it's called a gramam, where you only have, it's called Agraharam actually. You only have that area where only the Brahmins are living there. People who perform Brahminical functions.
Yeah, I know, Prabhu.
Yeah. So that's what Prabhupada envisioned. Like clusters of people doing the same kind of activities, living together. That's what he envisioned. And you may be surprised to know that in the plan, when Surabhi Maharaj made the plan, Prabhupada asked, where is the prison? Where is the jail? He asked. Which means that, I'll just tell you, just give me a second. I'll tell you the exact listing of that. This is Kishori Devi Dasi, she remembers. In Mayapur, I was in the room with Prabhupada and Surabhi when they were looking over the master plan for the Mayapur complex. At one point in that discussion, Prabhupada said, Surabhi, you forgot something. What, Srila Prabhupada? The jail. Later on in a class, I remember Prabhupada commenting, when an architect prepares to design a city, even though there currently are no prisoners, a jail must be built because they know there will be criminals in the future. I remember that statement because he was very firm. So Prabhupada wanted a Vedic city in Mayapur, right? So he wants to show how people with different natures and occupations can all conjointly work together as one family with a single designation of Vaishnava to glorify and spread Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. Therefore, that is the concept of a Vedic city that he had. If you ask the question, are we anywhere near that now? No.
That's what I was about to ask. Okay, go.
I knew that you asked the question. Whatever. I always had an interest in teaching, So when you're teaching something, you need to anticipate the next question that the students would ask. So I'm very used to that. That's why I said the next question you could ask is whether we are anywhere near that now. No. Will we be? Yes. Why not? Because when people sufficiently understand, devotees sufficiently understand what Prabhupada wanted, eventually it will happen.
That plan also will be in and around the current Vedic planetary temple only. That's what.
Need not be. Why should it be like that? Because see, originally
The concept of Prabhu, the concept of Agraharam the temple will be, or rather the place where they stay, it will be near the temple. That's why I'm asking.
Correct. See, but at the same time, when Prabhupada did not get land in Mayapur, I mean, not get. It is difficult to get land in Mayapur initially, and God brothers are also giving some trouble. Of course, we're studying about God brothers, so they were not even willing to cooperate to get land in Mayapur. From whatever I recollect, I may be wrong, but whatever I recollect, they also posed obstacles in getting land in Mayapur. Anyway, at that point in time, Prabhupada had this plan to have our international headquarters at Shantipur. So, the current Mayapur, Vedic of the temple of the Vedic Sanitarium, the surrounding areas have developed in a certain manner, which is also good for preaching. It's also good for preaching. There's no doubt whatsoever about it. But it does not still fulfill Prabhupada's vision of all these, different people living together and things like that. So it could happen. I don't know. It could happen further away or how far away, but it could happen within Navadip Mandal, within the Navadip Mandala Bhumi. So how it's going to happen, we'll have to see with time. But yes, it need not be centered only around the temple of Vedic Planetarium. You could have other temples also, right?
So I think this concept is already implemented in some of the places, like in Trivandrum, the new Vrindavan is there. Maybe in other places where the temple is there, in and around they build their houses in the same community. It's somewhat like that too.
I think Prabhupada had a more specific idea here, because he had people performing Brahminical kind of services living together, people performing Kshatriya kind of services were living together. Of course, everybody would come together to congregate in the temple. That's there. The common programs are all the same for everyone. But in terms of the living and the interactions, specific living and interactions, so there he envisioned, like Agraharam kind of setup, where people who have similar tastes, similar nature, similar kind of work, they live together.
Fine, Prabhu.
But however, for all general purposes, like everybody comes together temple, everybody does Sankirtan, all that is there.
Yeah,
at the cost of that's not the cost of that.
No, in the earlier days, the Brahmins started seeing the others as kind of untouchables when they started living separately and they felt superior themselves. We are, nowhere near to that because our understanding is totally different. We are very clear, Prabhupada has taught us that way. But over a period of time, this should not change. That's what we have to be very careful.
Yeah. See,
if we separate it and think.
Yeah. See, Prabhupada had this idea of a house in which the whole world can live, right? So, in fact, he did not even envision devotees cooking in their own houses, actually. Prabhupada promoted the concept of spiritual communism. Okay. In fact, he was seeing that devotees spend as much as of their time in practicing and spreading Krishna consciousness. So in places like Mayapur, his original idea, if you look at it, was that people live together. People eat together. Specific groups can live together, but as far as eating is concerned, everybody eats together. And in fact, there is an instance where, although Prabhupada says child worship is as more important than deity worship, he did not necessarily expect that every mother will attend only to their own child. Like he said that you could have some kind of nursery where those who have that motherly tendencies and those who have that ability, the patience, all that. So somebody qualified could handle a group of kids, so that the mothers could also do other services. It's not the child will not be with the mother, but for a certain period of the day, somebody who's got those qualifications could handle the children. It's not that every mother has to handle their own child 24 hours of the day, So like Prabhupada, there are different things that he had envisioned. Basically, the idea of world as one family, like how Vaisheshika Prabhu has developed this. One world, one family, right? For book distribution. That is what Prabhupada's vision was. One world, one family.
Fine, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, there is a question by Neelam Madhuri Mathaji. He's asking, could you please give me some more incidents where a pure devotee is beyond the duality of this world? Yes. We saw that incident where Prabhupada, for the first time when he came to India, we saw how we came with Kirtananda Swami, and we saw how the taxi driver cheated him, right? And Prabhupada, of course, he did his part by trying to argue with him and do the needful, but still he cheated. So Prabhupada said, "Oh, maybe I've done something to him in the past." I mean, so that is called the nature of a devotee. He is beyond the duality. He does not get carried away by the sense of what is it? Loss or gain. Like we are very much affected by that concept of loss or gain. But Prabhupada was not affected by that concept of loss or gain. So he tried to do the needful to rectify the situation. But when it could not be rectified, he said, "What to do? I must have done something in the past." That is how a devotee, pure devotee is. They try to do the needful, but if there is a reversal or if there is a gain, there's a gain, they think is Krishna's mercy. If there is a reversal, they think, "What do I deserve it?" Do you want more incidents, Madhu?
Yes, Prabhu. If possible. Yes, Prabhu. If possible.
Once Prabhupada was chastising a disciple after a lecture. So this also, I think, it comes with the Leela. But anyway, one of the biographies. So Prabhupada is chastising a disciple after a lecture, and a new person in the audience, he was observing that Prabhupada is annoyed with his disciple. So he simply told Prabhupada, he simply said to Prabhupada, "Swamiji, why don't we just chant Hare Krishna?" Prabhupada looked at him and he said, "Oh, very good advice." And he picked up his beads and started chanting. So this is a quality of a pure devotee. He considered, "Oh, this person has given me good advice." He did not think, "Who are you? You are a neophyte and you don't even know who Krishna is properly. You're just coming to my lectures and you're telling me what I should do." He didn't think like that. So he was beyond the concept of insult and praise and things like that. So here we saw how Prabhupada is not, Prabhupada, what we saw in this particular instance in the Leelamrita now that we are reading this, he is not into luxury or poverty or anything. Whatever is needed, whatever is to be done, he would do to serve the Lord. For example, sometimes people are attached to simplicity. Prabhupada is not even attached to simplicity. He said, we can live under, he was very happy living in that Bhajan Kutir. But he said that we need to build good buildings so that people can feel comfortable when they come here. So although he liked simple living, but he was not attached to that as far as the model of how Mayapur should be built. He simply said that if we build like this, nobody will come and stay. He wanted a proper building where people will come and stay. As far as he is concerned, he was okay with just living there. Is that fine? Okay. Who else? Anyone else has anything to say or ask or comment? Okay, we'll go on to the next section. Prabhupada in Vrindavan.
February 1972. During Prabhupada's absence from Vrindavan, the devotees had been unable to persuade Mr. S to grant legal permission for ISKCON to use the land. Prabhupada had insistently directed one of his Indian-born disciples, Kshirodakasai, to acquire from Mr. S an actual deed. Kshirodakasai had pleaded with Mr. S, and seeing Mr. S's indecision, he had spoken with Mrs. S and then with the two of them together. Mr. and Mrs. S had agreed that since they could not decide, they would put the matter before Srimati Radharani herself. Mrs. S had asked Kshirodakasai to take 2 slips of paper and to write yes on one and no on the other. These she had folded and placed before the family deity of Radha Krishna. She had then asked Kshirodakasai to pick one of the papers. Kshirodakasai had done so, and in the presence of Mr. and Mrs. S and Radha Krishna, he had opened the piece of paper on which was written the word yes. When Prabhupada had heard the news, he had been joyous. I am especially pleased upon you that you have secured the S land for Krishna. Now let us cooperate to build a wonderful center there in Vrindavan.
There is more detail about this. There is more detail about this pastime in the Prabhupada, Yadugara Prabhu's Prabhupada memory series, 11 DVDs or 11 YouTube series. So there is mentioned that there was a lady who was pretty popular in Vrindavan who was also competing to get the same land that the Mr. and Mrs. S or Saraf, I think, had planned to give to ISKCON. So it got into some kind of a tangle there. And that is why it was resolved like this. Who should it be given to? They got into a dilemma at one point. And here it says how Kshirodakasai Prabhu, he resolved it by picking up the right paper. Please go ahead.
In March 1972, Prabhupada had returned to Vrindavan to sign the deed with Mr. S and to perform the groundbreaking ceremony. With permission from the Goswamis at the Radha Damodar temple, he had arranged for quarters for his disciples so they would have a place to reside while the temple at Raman Reti was under construction. Yamuna. It just so happened that on the morning the Goswamis were to sign an agreement with Prabhupada for use of the rooms at Radha Damodar, the electricity went out. Prabhupada's secretary had only an electric typewriter. So I reminded Prabhupada that I was trained in writing calligraphy. I had my writing pens with me. So immediately Prabhupada drafted the writing that he wanted, and I took it to another room, sat down, and hand-lettered a contract with gold embossing on all the capitals. Within 15 minutes, he presented it to Srila Prabhupada. Before the Goswamis, Prabhupada held up the document with pleasure and said, "Just see, my disciples are expert in everything." Now the devotees would be allowed to reside above his rooms at Radha Damodar temple, and they would also have access to his rooms for cleaning. Prabhupada felt it was a grand occasion that there was something in writing for the preservation of his rooms in the Radha Damodar temple. To close the transaction for the land in Raman Reti, Prabhupada and Mr. S met at the magistrate's court in Mathura. In the presence of lawyers, they completed the formalities. Prabhupada saw it as Krishna's grace that he had acquired a good plot of land in Vrindavan, and writing to his GBC secretaries in America, he had asked them to send as many men as possible to help in the new project. He described his intentions for raising up a very excellent center to revive the spiritual life for Vrindavan on behalf of Rupa and Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada told Kshirodakasai, "I want on this occasion huge prasadam should be prepared, and every man in Vrindavan should be invited and take prasadam." 2 days later, with 100 people attending, Prabhupada held the cornerstone laying ceremony at Raman Reti Again, he descended into the ceremonial pit and placed the deity of Ananta, on whose head the temple would rest. But late at night, the land was attacked. An elderly Indian widow with local fame as a sadhu became angry that Mr. S had not given her the land which she had several times requested. During the night, she sent gundas to dismantle the brick foundation of the ceremonial cornerstone and to desecrate the pit, which had just that day been filled with flowers and religious objects. The gundas dug open the hole, threw garbage into it, and stole the posted sign announcing the land's new ownership. Prabhupada was in his room at the Radha Damodar temple when he heard what had happened. He became angry and told his disciples to show the deed to the police. That night, several policemen guarded the land, and when the hired gundas came again, the police accosted them and warned that if they caused any more trouble, they would be arrested. And that was the end of that. Prabhupada had several times said that by becoming a devotee, one gains many enemies. The incident also served to confirm Prabhupada's conviction that ISKCON's taking possession of the land should be followed as quickly as possible by construction of a temple. They should at least encircle the land with a fence, build small huts and live on the land while preparing for temple construction. Sages, this will be the Krishna Balaram temple, Prabhupada said. We didn't really know what was going on. We all thought it was so far away. It was really the boondocks, Ramandreti. Nobody was out there. It was just an isolated place. And there were lots of dacoits living out there. We thought, if we are going to have a temple out here, no one will ever come. But Prabhupada said, wherever there is Krishna, everyone will come. Prabhupada's secretary, Shyam Sundar, wrote to a god brother about the newly acquired Vrindavan property. Earlier in the day before breakfast, Prabhupada sewed up 4,800 square feet gift plot in Ramandreti, where Krishna used to sport with friends in the forest about 10 minutes walk from Radha Damodar. Prabhupada surveyed the land with the rope from his mosquito net, bargained for, drew plans for, drew up the deed for, went to Mathura magistrate's court for and signed, sealed and delivered in an instant. Prabhupada has asked me to request you that at least 50 men from the US must come to India immediately. At last, we have got a solid program in India, huge projects at Mayapur, Vrindavan and Bombay. All the lands are acquired, arrangements made and everything by Prabhupada. But only a few of us men are here to struggle with an immense task, the biggest by far within the society, of developing these three places. And believe me, these three projects are more dear to Prabhupada than any yet contemplated. In the month while Prabhupada was away from Bombay, he had left on February 10th. The payment of 50,000 rupees was duly made. Slowly, at first, a few devotees moved to the Juhu land, living in the tent. At night, the rats and mosquitoes would disturb the devotees' sleep. While attempting to clear the overgrown weeds, they came upon empty liquor bottles and overflowing sewage. Without Prabhupada present, their resolution grew weak. But then Brahmananda Swami returned from Calcutta, where he had been with Srila Prabhupada. Brahmananda Swami was inspired and he gave the Bombay devotees new impetus. They would have to clear the land and raise a pandal right away. Brahmananda Swami had never put on a pandal program before, but he hired a contractor to build several chatai palm frond houses for the devotees and a festival tent. Even before the construction could begin, however, the devotees would have to thoroughly clear the land. Mr. Sethi, a neighbor and life member, hired a work crew to cut down the weeds and vegetation, and several life members and friends in Bombay also came forward to assist Mr. N. Offered to help by sending one of his servants, Mr. Matar, to organize the hired laborers in clearing the field. The devotees also worked in preparation for Prabhupada's return. Sri Sri Radha Rasabihari arrived at Hare Krishna land in a taxi, riding across the laps of several devotees. They had moved before, and this time their residence was a tent. They had first come to be with the devotees of Bombay during the Pandal program at Cross Maidan in downtown Bombay. On that occasion, there had been a procession to Chowpatty beach, and when the devotees had arrived, Radha Rasabihari, beautifully dressed and decorated and installed in an ornate palanquin, had been awaiting them. Krishna was white marble and held a silver flute. Radharani's right hand, palm forward, extended a benediction. They were beautiful. After their first appearance at Chowpatty, Radha Rasabihari had moved to the Akash Ganga building, where gradually the devotees had established a decent standard of deity worship. When Prabhupada had left orders that Radha Rasabihari should move to Juhu as soon as the down payment was made, some of the devotees had questioned him. Why should the deity move before the facilities were proper? Shouldn't they wait until the temple was built? Once the deity is installed on a piece of property, Prabhupada had replied, no one will remove them. More than anyone else, Prabhupada was aware of the proper worship to be offered to Radha Rasabihari, but his emphasis now was on securing the land. How else, he reasoned, could he eventually get Radha Rasabihari a royal throne and temple, unless they themselves first establish their right of proprietorship by taking up residence at Hare Krishna land. The arrival of Radha Rasabihari at Juhu also meant increased difficulties for the devotees who now had to struggle to maintain the morning puja and took 6 daily offerings in the meager kitchen. Even Radha Rasabihari's tent was insubstantial and swayed in the wind. Srila Prabhupada, however, saw the move as a necessary transcendental tactic. He felt certain that everyone involved, himself, the owners of the land, the Bombay municipality, would accept that the land belonged to Krishna, since Krishna was already residing there. And because he was asking Lord Krishna himself to accept these inconveniences, he prayed to the deity, my dear sir, please remain here and I shall build a beautiful temple for you. By the time Prabhupada returned to Bombay, Radha Rasabihari were installed on the stage of the festival pandal. Attendance at the festival was not as great as would have been in downtown Bombay. No more than 500 people came a night. But Prabhupada was satisfied. This festival was on their own property, and this was only the beginning. Every evening, Prabhupada lectured at the pandal and attended the kirtan and aarti before Radha Rasabihari. Pancha Dravida Swami had collected donations of 5 tons of dal, rice, and flour, and devotees were regularly cooking enough khichdi to serve 125 people free prasadam daily. In the evening, Prabhupada himself would give out halwa from the deity's plate, and the crowd, including well-to-do businessmen and their wives, would press forward to receive the prasadam. Prabhupada liked the festival so much that he told the devotees to arrange to keep the tent for a perpetual festival. Prabhupada lived on the land in a tent, just like the other devotees, until Mr. Acharya, one of the more favorable tenants living in the back of the property, invited him to stay at his home. Within a few days of his arrival at Juhu, Prabhupada was already Prabhupada was ready to hold the groundbreaking and cornerstone laying ceremony, another tactic for securing possession of the land. But it was more than a tactic, as he wanted a temple constructed as soon as possible. Radha Ras Bihari should not remain standing in a tent, but should be protected by a silver and teak wood simhasan on a marble altar. They should be surrounded by deities of the two gopis, Lalita and Vishakha, and their temple should have marble domes more than 100 feet high. Thousands should come daily for darshan and prasadam. One morning, in the midst of the festival activities, the devotees of Hare Krishna land joined Prabhupada in a simple cornerstone laying ceremony. They had dug a deep ceremonial pit and surrounded it with bricks. Prabhupada descended and placed the deity of Shesha. Then, sitting on a simple platform, Prabhupada accompanied the kirtan by playing a brass gong, while one of the devotees came before him and threw dirt into the pit, filling it while smoke rose from the sacrificial fire. Prabhupada was outraged that Brahmananda Swami had agreed to pay the contractors 40,000 rupees for the pandal construction. It was the same old thing, the foolish Western disciples getting cheated. Prabhupada refused to pay. 4,000 rupees should be more than enough. When the contractors came to see him, he told them,
that is one whole zero less than 40,000. 4,000 is 40,000 is 10 times more than 4,000. Huge difference.
Yeah. When the contractors came to see him, he told them that he had little money and that they would have to be satisfied with 4,000 rupees. They protested, but Prabhupada became angry and insisted, accept it, you are making 500% profit. As soon as they see us, Prabhupada said later, they say, these Americans, they have got money. Our work is going on in India, but as soon as money is being spent, 50% is being spoiled because you Americans are inexperienced. What can be done? The Indians want your money and they cheat like anything. During the Pandal festival, the tenement neighbors had become disturbed by kirtans over the loudspeaker. They were already sorry, Prabhu, my mobile, I have to just put for charge.
Mati, are you having difficulty reading because you don't seem to be fully well? Should I ask someone else to continue?
Yeah, Prabhu, I need to charge my mobile. I know I'm okay. Yeah, maybe I can just take a break for a little while.
Okay. Any other volunteer to read? Indulika Mataji, would you like to read? Maybe she's not available.
Prabhu, Krishna Chandra here. I'll read.
Okay.
They were already disturbed that their landlord, Mr. N, was slow to repair the buildings and would sometimes let them go a full week without water before fixing the plumbing. Being suddenly forced to live with more than 20 American devotees only accelerated their dissatisfaction. Some of the neighbors were converted Christians and unsympathetic to Vaishnavism. They even feared their children might again be converted to Hinduism. Some tenants claimed the devotees were infringing on their privacy. Some criticized the devotees for arguing among themselves, and others criticized that the unmarried man and woman were living in close proximity, even though in separate quarters. A few of the neighbors, however, could see that the Western Vaishnavas were struggling to sincerely worship Radha and Krishna. None of the tenants criticized Prabhupada, however, so when he was present, he was able to pacify them and resolve any disagreements. But Prabhupada knew that after he left, the situation could easily become volatile. Prabhupada was planning an extensive world tour, traveling eastward to Australia, Japan, Hawaii, the US, and perhaps Mexico and Europe. It might be as long as half a year before he would return to India, and he wanted things to progress smoothly in Bombay without him. A few days before Prabhupada's departure, Madhuvishya Swami complained, "I am not feeling very enthusiastic here. I think I need a change." Prabhupada asked him where he wanted to go, and Madhuvishya replied that he was thinking of Australia. Prabhupada said, "Yes, I am going there. You also come." Brahmananda Swami told Prabhupada that the preaching was deteriorating in Nairobi in his absence, and Prabhupada agreed that he should return to his duties there. Again, Prabhupada had to choose a new Bombay manager, and this time he chose Giriraj, a young brahmachari and leading preacher in making ISKCON life members. Prabhupada reasoned that since their sense of management was to collect donations and make life members, and since Giriraj was expert at that, then even though he was young and otherwise inexperienced, he had the most important qualification. Prabhupada had already found Giriraj to be simple and submissively dedicated to helping him develop Hare Krishna land. Giriraj. Srila Prabhupada said, "You will do, Giriraj." So I said, "Yes, Prabhupada, whatever you say." I wasn't actually very happy about it, but I understood that one should be surrendered to the spiritual master, and whatever he said, one should do. So I accepted. Prabhupada said that a good management meant that whatever needs doing, you do it. That's all. Later, I went to see Srila Prabhupada, and he was sitting behind his desk. He said, "Now the full responsibility is on you." I winced when he said that because I wasn't used to taking responsibility. During Prabhupada's stay in Bombay, Hans Kielman, a young architect from Holland, had come to hear the lecture, and he became interested in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada convinced Hans to become a devotee and help build a Hare Krishna city in Bombay. Under Prabhupada's direction, Hans at once began to make architectural drawings for the building. Hans, Prabhupada said, "Now you listen carefully. Lord Krishna has sent you here. You must design these temples for him. You must do this very sincerely and not to be afraid." I was completely surrendered. That moment was really ecstasy for me. He had a pile of photographs on his desk, and he gave them to me and said, "Look at this." I looked at the pictures, and they were photographs of new Govindaji temple in Vrindavan. He said, "I want you to make a design like this." So I asked him, "How big, Srila Prabhupada?" He gave me a piece of typing paper and said I should draw on this paper. Then he gave me the photographs, and I said I should draw on this paper. Then he gave me the photographs and a pencil and a ruler. He took me to the next room and told me to sit down at the table. Pradyumna was there with all his Sanskrit books. Shamashunda was there typing the letters, and suddenly I was in between making the drawings. Prabhupada said Giriraj and others would have to collect 64 lakhs of rupees for the construction. The devotees had no idea how they would raise even a fraction of that amount. But Prabhupada gave them some ideas. He talked to them about enlisting the support of influential men by using the Bent Nama system, whereby a person purchases the use of guest rooms of a life, and there were other ways. But the immediate step was to get the land. They had possession of the land, but before building, they should have the deed. Since Mr. N was already overdue in delivering the deed, Prabhupada told Giriraj to press him to comply with the written agreement and deliver the deed at once. In Prabhupada's last lecture in Bombay, he spoke about 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan and the bittersweet ecstasy of their hankering to be with Krishna. Some of Prabhupada's disciples took it that Prabhupada was speaking about this because he was himself going to be living for a long time. At the airport the next day, there was a joyful farewell as Prabhupada waited for his flight to Australia. Sitting in the VIP lounge, surrounded by devotees, Prabhupada watched Madhuvesha Swami lead an ecstatic kirtan. If you go on having kirtan like this, Prabhupada told the devotees, our Bombay project will be successful. When Prabhupada saw Mr. N had come, he explained, oh, Mrs. N had come. He exclaimed, oh, Mrs. N, you are also here. You are becoming one of us. Prabhupada had the extraordinary ability to bring a spiritual vision into physical reality, to change a part of the material world into spiritual energy, so that even a common man could perceive the spiritual reality. This was Prabhupada's constant effort. Often a transcendentalist hesitates to deal with the material world, fearing he may become spiritually weakened. The Vedic injunctions therefore warn the transcendentalists to avoid associating with money and materialistic persons. But Prabhupada, following the principles taught by Srila Rupa Goswami, saw that everything material had the potential of being used in the service of Krishna and thus of regaining its spiritual nature. Following this principle, an expert devotee, although apparently acting within the material sphere, could remain always in touch with the spiritual energy. For such a devotee, nothing was material. In the Vedic scriptures, the great devotee Narada Muni, because of his ability to convert materialistic men into devotees, is referred to as Chintamani, touchstone. Just as Chintamani is said to convert iron into gold, so Narada could transform a beast-like hunter into a pure Vaishnava. And as Narada is glorified in the Vedas for accomplishing such feats in bygone ages, so Srila Prabhupada is a similar potent touchstone in the present age. Again and again, he showed by his straightforward application of Krishna consciousness that he could change a materialist into a completely renounced, active devotee of the Lord. And now, after recruiting a number of devotees from Maya's camp, he wanted to engage them in transforming as much as possible of the material world into living spirit. By his transcendental visionary words, he was attempting to convert stone and human energy into glorious spiritual temples. While ambitious materialists sometimes criticize transcendentalists as unproductive, Prabhupada, because of his constant activity, could never be so accused. Rather, people would criticize him as being a capitalist in the dress of a sannyasi. But such criticism never deterred Prabhupada. He was carrying out the desire of the previous acharyas. He had written this conclusion in his Srimad Bhagavatam even before coming to America in 1965. Therefore, all the sages and devotees of the Lord have recommended that the subject matter of art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, and all other branches of knowledge should be wholly and solely applied in the service of the Lord. Prabhupada wanted to convert significant portions of the material world into spiritual world. In attempting to construct a spiritual city in Juhu, he realized he was launching a major attack against Maya. within a few months, so many complications and headaches had already disturbed his plans, and more would come. The battle was just beginning. Sometimes Prabhupada's disciples found the work to be draining and stressful. They would become bewildered. They had come to the spiritual life of bliss, not for anxiety. Prabhupada's presence and his constant encouragement helped them remain steadfast. He knew that once they tasted the nectar of selfless dedication to Krishna, they would never accept anything lesser. He would encourage them, reminding them of the words of spiritual predecessors like Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who had said, "Difficulties undertaken in the course of your devotional service, I will consider the greatest happiness." Continue, Prabhu. Chapter 4. Prabhu. Now we're in chapter 4.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. So we've come to the end of that chapter. One significant thing about Srila Prabhupada was that he was not just an expert on philosophy or the teachings of Krishna consciousness. He was also an expert in how to handle the material energy and people were dealing with the material energy. He was an expert at both the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, the teaching, and also expert in how to deal with the material energy. So that is something very significant. It's not that everybody has chosen to do that. Like Gaurakishore Babaji, he did not choose to engage the material energy. Although pure devotees have the capability to do it. So this part about organizing a spiritual movement, that was a specific mandate which Srila Prabhupada fulfilled. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur started it, but Srila Prabhupada extended it across the whole world. The art of spreading the Krishna consciousness movement through organization. Through organization. Organized Sankirtan movement.
I have been reading.
Any thoughts, questions, reflections?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, Swati, please go ahead.
Yeah. I was just thinking, it almost seemed as if Prabhupada was trained to be good at both sides, because as being a businessman, he had so much experience of dealing with materialistic people and different kinds of people, running a organization, management skills, and all of that. And then we see how he's using all of those time and again. Even when his disciples are getting cheated, even in US, when his disciples were getting cheated, he was smart enough to suggest how they should deal with the people there, let alone in India. Of course, he is the expert. So it really seems as if like it is really a life in preparation, that he had developed so many skills which he could effectively use later on in the service of the Lord.
I would say it's the other way around. I would say it's the other way around, in the sense that because he is a pure devotee of the Lord, therefore he knows how to deal with the material energy. He doesn't need any training, actually, formally speaking. Because, for example, when he went to America is a different thing altogether, right? It's not like India. But yet he knew how to deal with the American people. He knew everything, right? How did he know that? Because of his perception. Because of his perception. A pure devotee, his senses are perfect. They are not covered or influenced by the modes of material nature. So he can see exactly what is going on. And because he can see exactly what is going on, he knows exactly what is to be done. That is what happens in the case of the pure devotees. Their perceptions are perfect. Because their perceptions are perfect, their solutions are also perfect.
Oh, thank you so much, Prabhu. Yeah, that seems the perfect answer, right? Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, I mean, for example, there are things which Prabhupada did which have no formal connection, no actual connection with what he had done in India. For example, I'm just trying to think of a suitable. There are many examples. Just one striking example of something that he did which has nothing to do with his background in India. Okay, take for example, right now what we're dealing with, right? So, Prabhupada was Prabhupada was involved in the pharmaceutical industry, right? But when it came to, he was like, you don't find any time that Prabhupada was a civil engineer and handling projects and things like that, right? But when it came to handling a project like this, he knew about, I mean, he engaged as an architect. Later on, we see in Bombay, there's a construction company which is engaged. Different things, like Prabhupada, you could say, okay, he had some legal experience, fine. But what about construction experience? Nothing, right? But Prabhupada actually takes it up. You don't find anything in the Leelamrita so far that we have read. Also, or Prabhupada recollecting anywhere that he built a house or nothing, right? You don't hear anything about Prabhupada building anything. Prabhupada conceives a Vedic city, the different quarters, and all of that is not city planning. All that was not part of his previous training. I mean, within quotes training.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, so many skills he exhibits, and so perfect, amazingly perfect. Yeah.
That's why, I mean, when the pure when the activities of a pure devotee
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, sir. Hare Krishna. Yeah, sorry. So the activities of a pure devotee are like when it says that, for example, when Prabhupada says Krishna dictated the books, okay, so it means that Krishna told him what needs to be written. But Prabhupada has his personal style of writing. So it is both. It is not like Prabhupada is just a scribe, okay, he's like a machine, and then he's like a channel. Because in the realm of personalism, when Prabhupada is saying that Krishna dictated, the purport, what it means is that Krishna told him what is to be written. And Prabhupada presented it. He said, these are my personal ecstasies, right? So you have to reconcile both. In this word, when he says Krishna dictated to him, it means the content is dictated by Krishna, but the style, all that, the flavor of it is Prabhupada's flavor. That's what it means. So similarly, when it comes to any other project for that matter, Krishna, I mean, like for example, okay, I think this is with Rameshwar Prabhu, that once a reporter asked, how do you run the Krishna consciousness movement? Prabhupada actually answers that Krishna tells me what to do. So Rameshwar Prabhu tries to clarify to the interviewer that actually Krishna says, I am the intelligence, and therefore I give the intelligence. Sorry. Krishna says, I give the intelligence. So therefore, the intelligence of the pure devotee, he gives some explanation. And Prabhupada says, no, Krishna tells me what to do. So the point is that a pure devotee, like as Prabhupada says, that he has a transcendental television in the heart. So he directly hears from the Paramatma. Of course, he can see Krishna everywhere also. What's that? I've read the first line. Yomam Pashati Sarvatra, Sarvam Mai Pashati. So the pure devotee sees the Lord everywhere, sees everything in the Lord. So this is such a natural, effortless, constitutional position of the pure devotee that he is always in touch with the Supreme Lord. So the Supreme Lord says, but it does not mean that. Sometimes people can just confuse this to mean, okay, ultimately everything Krishna is doing. So what is the pure devotee's role? Pure devotee's role is that there is, it's not that Krishna is like, the pure devotees are not like machines which Krishna is just engaging something. Yes, proper uses the word instruments and all that, but what it means is these are personal instruments, right? So when Krishna says, the Prabhupada says Krishna dictated, what did he dictate? Is it every line, every word and everything? No. Krishna dictated the content. Okay, this is what is to be. In this purport, this should be explained. The Prabhupada explains it. So like that, the Prabhupada gives, Krishna gives this thing of what is to be done in different circumstances. In fact, I was suggesting that if we finish the Leelamrita, if possible, if Mayapur should let me figure it out with that, we could take up the book, I'll Build You a Temple. There's one instance where Prabhupada is apparently, within quotes, cheated. Not cheated, something goes wrong. And Prabhupada says what to do. Krishna did not want to tell me. Something like he said.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. That was really, nice understanding.
What else? If anyone wants to share something, ask something. Shailesh Govinda Prabhu, we haven't heard from you.
Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanava. Sorry, Prabhuji, these sessions are clashing with my every week, so I'm not able to give you as much feedback and interaction because I have to then re-listen to the class, and then I have questions, but I don't have chance to ask them again. So next week, I'm hoping that we'll interact a bit more. I've got a few things I'll bring up next week, so apologies, Prabhu.
Sure. At least we could hear your voice. The class is incomplete without you. I'm saying something.
You're too kind, Prabhu.
Okay, I think we'll read for another 5 minutes and then around 5 minutes and then we'll stop.
Chapter 4. Prabhupada traveled with 3 disciples. Shamashunda, his secretary.
Prabhu, please read the title of the chapter.
Okay. Around the world, but
it's actually in the book. It is chapter 40.
Oh, I see.
The online version. In chapter 4. In our book, it's chapter 4, volume 5. But in the online edition, it is chapter 40.
Okay. Chapter 40, around the world, but absorbed in Bombay. Prabhupada traveled with 3 disciples, Shamashundara as his secretary, Pradyumna as his servant, a Sanskrit editor, and Nanda Kumara as his cook. The first stop was Singapore, where, without explanation, immigration authorities refused Prabhupada entry into the country. Sympathetic Indians in Singapore had arranged for Prabhupada to lecture and had even mailed hundreds of invitations. But Srila Prabhupada, disappointed and feeling ill, had to continue the 12-hour flight to Sydney, April 1st, 1972. Prabhupada planned to stay a few days in Sydney before going on to Melbourne. Although the Krishna consciousness movement was young in Australia, Prabhupada saw positive signs. devotees to initiate TV and radio appearances, and an interested crowd at his morning lectures in the temple. This was only his second visit to Australia. On his first visit, almost a year ago, he had installed the deities Radha Gopinath and had prayed to them, "Now I am leaving you in the hands of the Melechas. I cannot take the responsibility. You please guide these boys and girls and give them the intelligence to worship you very nicely." Now, on returning and seeing the deities beautifully dressed and well cared for, he felt happy. After 5 busy days of preaching, he flew on to Melbourne. Upananda. In Melbourne, Prabhupada spoke at the town hall, and all the Melbourne hippies came. There was a man there called the Wizard. He used to be a professor at the university, but he resigned his post so he could carry out his shenanigans. He was very intellectual. He was dressed in black cap and leotard, and he got up as soon as Srila Prabhupada asked for questions. He had a group of his followers. First, he spoke very respectfully. "Excuse me, Your Divine Grace. I have been listening to your lecture, but I have one thing I would like to say in this regard. I believe that I am God. I am the center of the universe, and I will prove sometimes next year that I am the center of the universe." Prabhupada said, "That's all right. Everybody is thinking like that. What makes you different?" Actually, the Wizard's whole game was that he wanted to be different, his dress, everything. So Prabhupada exposed him as just another materialistic fool. Everybody started laughing and clapping. Auckland, April 14, 1972. The devotees had just opened a temple in New Zealand a few weeks before Prabhupada's arrival. Prabhupada stayed a couple of days and installed Radha Krishna deities. Burujan. Prabhupada installed a large marble deities, but there was only one girl to take care of them. Prabhupada was insisting that the deities should be installed anyway and that they should be taken care of properly. He demanded that they should have many sets of clothes immediately. So some devotees built a temporary wooden altar and put a curtain for the deities. The curtains fell down. Everything was going wrong. It was confusing and everyone was upset. So Srila Prabhupada just took over. He said, "Put this here, put that back there, do this, do that." He completely took command of the whole situation. The devotees put the curtains back, and Prabhupada said, "Get rid of this Vyasasan." And they all took the Vyasana out because it was so big and the room was so small that there was no room for the people. Prabhupada just put a mat on the floor and sat down on that. Prabhupada visited for one night in Hong Kong, where he lectured at a program arranged by Brujan and his wife, Jagadarani. Brujan, we had taught the Indian children to sing the prayers to the spiritual master. So we had them sing for Prabhupada. He looked at me and he was really pleased. Then he said, "Your wife said they are not interested people, but you have so many students here." I said, "You have so many students, Prabhupada." At the end of the lecture, Prabhupada asked if there were any questions, and a little Indian boy raised his hand and asked, "Who started the forest fire?" The boy was thinking of a forest fire mentioned in the Krishna book in Krishna's pastime, but all he said was, "Who started the forest fire?" But Prabhupada took the question in a different way, that this material world is like a blazing forest fire, just like the prayers to the spiritual master had described. So Prabhupada said, no one started the forest fire, it started automatically, just like in the forest, by the rubbing of two bamboos, a fire may start. But by chanting Hare Krishna, we can get out of this forest fire of material life. In Japan, okay.
We can stop there. We can stop there because next is a little bit longer section for Japan. Okay, so we'll stop there for today. We'll resume again next Sunday. Thank you all very much for joining.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, if you have anything to say or ask, there's still some time left. Else we can continue.
Hare Krishna.
Next month.
Prabhu, I don't know whether this question is connected to this session or not, but this question is there in my mind quite a long time. While reading
go
Srila
ahead.
Prabhupada Leelamrita or Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, we learn so many things. We gain so much of knowledge. But whenever I hear Bhakti is independent, it is not depending on anything, including jnana, means knowledge. So how can we connect this and understand, Prabhu? Is it possible to explain now?
Yeah, I mean, that is referring to jnana means knowledge which is not directly connected to Krishna. Just give me 1 second. I just read out to you something which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes. Very important. Yeah. So he explains very nicely. Explains. Just give me a second. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes, when the heart or consciousness is devoid of the Siddhanta of Krishna consciousness, it cannot be fixed on Krishna. Abhideya cannot take place for one who has no Sambandha Jnana. One who is devoid of Sambandha doesn't obtain Prayojana. One is deluded by misleading conclusions, does not perform service to Krishna. One who is lazy to understand Siddhanta cannot get rid of anarthas. One who confuses Krishna with matter doesn't perform service to Krishna. So, whatever we are doing here is all the Bhakti Shastras. They are not jnana. Jnana is a function of the mind, but the Bhakti Shastra is a function of the Chit Shakti of the Lord. Like you have such Chit Ananda, right? Chit is a sense of awareness. What awareness is there in the spiritual world? Awareness of Krishna. So, the Bhakti Shastras represent the Chit Shakti of the Lord. You know, so you are awakening your awareness of Krishna. It's got nothing to do with jnana. Jnana is a function of the mind, which is material anyway. But that is not this. The Bhakti Shastras are not a function of jnana. Bhakti Shastras are a function of the Chit Shakti of the Lord.
Could you please explain it a little bit more, Prabhu?
See, the soul's nature is Satchidananda. Okay? Now, there are three potencies of the Lord, which you are aware of, which is Sandhini, Samvit, and Ladini. Okay, Sandhini potency is what maintains everything. Okay, then you have Samvit potency. Samvit potency is what causes awareness of the Lord, and Ladini potency is that awareness of the Lord combined with what do you say, suitable devotional service to the Lord. So you need all the three, right? You need existence, then you need awareness, then you need activity. Existence, awareness, activity. So you have Sandhini, Samvit, and Ladini potency. So these three together function in sync to give pleasure to Krishna. So So Bhakti Shastras is a feature of the Samvit potency of the Lord. Sat Chit Ananda. Sat is existence. Chit is awareness. Ananda is activity. Is it okay or no? This has got nothing to do with the mind and intelligence and all. That is all. That is like jnana is a feature of the mind. What mind and intelligence? Because it is trying to free you from matter. That's all. But so it is inferior to Bhakti Shastra. The Bhakti Shastra put you directly in touch with Krishna, and also free you from matter. Both things happen.
So our reading and hearing should be continued about Krishna. That is directly connecting us to Krishna. So it is not the so-called knowledge which we attain materially. Am I right, Prabhu?
No, correct. Not at all. Even spiritual knowledge, like for example, the Jnanis. I'm not talking about Bhakti Shastra. Jnanis, they study so many Vedanta Sutra and all that. That is still a function of the mind. You know? So, in the sense that it helps you, it purifies the mind, it controls the mind, and eventually one can attain liberation. That's it. But it cannot provide you with bliss and I mean, you can only get the bliss of Brahman. That's it. But nothing compared to Bhakti. It's not a Hladini potency of the Lord. So Bhakti Shastras, first of all, awaken your. It is it's a feature of the Samvit potency, and it awakens your awareness of Krishna. And when you act in that awareness of Krishna, then the bliss is awakened. Of course, you could say that even hearing also produces the bliss, because in Krishna consciousness, everything is absolute. That's a little bit more intricate to explain. I just put it in more simplistic terms. Because our mind cannot, for example, Shravanam, Kirtanam, they themselves are perfect in themselves. Like Sukadeva Goswami, just by reciting Bhagavatam, he attained perfection. He's an example of that, right? Parishad Maharaj, just by hearing Bhagavatam, with rapt attention, he could fully realize Krishna. Of course, he's an eternal associate of the Lord, but as an example, he's given as an example of just by hearing. But we may not be able to just hear or just chant. Therefore, there is a combination of activities which the Acharya has given. All of them are bhakti activities, which produce the result of prayojana, prema.
So reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam is also a part of bhakti. It is not only.
No, not jnana. Yeah. It is part. Definitely, it's part of bhakti. Definitely, it's part of bhakti. It is an essential part of bhakti. Like if you look at the Caitanya Charitamrita, if you look at the Shikshashtakam, okay, so you have Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Dagni Nirvapanam, Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam, Vidya Vadu Jivanam. You know, so Vidya is considered as the Vadu. So it is not just chanting the holy names, but also Vidya Vadu. Vadu means the consort. So we chant Hare Krishna and also study the Bhakti Shastra. Just like we worship Radha Krishna, right? We don't worship Krishna alone. Correct or not? So, like that, holy name along with Vidya. What did Lord Chaitanya come to give actually? I mean, Sarad Bhavatacharya explains it very nicely. In fact, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that verse which Sarad Bhavatacharya composed with glorification of Chaitanya should be worn as a necklace around the necks of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What is that verse? Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga, Shishyarthaneka Purusha Purana, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dari, Sipam Budir, Yes Tamaham Prapatye. So Lord Chaitanya came to give us three things. What are the three things? Vairagya, Vidya, Bhakti. So what kind of Vidya it is? Vidya along with, but Vidya there refers to Krishna conscious knowledge. Krishna conscious knowledge is always transcendental. So that Krishna conscious knowledge along with the practices of Bhakti produces, okay, if you have proper Krishna conscious knowledge, you perform Bhakti properly. And if you perform Bhakti properly, then Vairagya will come. If you do not have proper knowledge of Krishna consciousness, you cannot perform Bhakti properly. You can chant the holy name, but if you chant the holy name with material desire, with material misconceptions, if you think that Krishna and Lord Shiva are the same, even if you chant Hare Krishna for 1,000,000 years, still you will not attain prema. So therefore, if you look at the offenses against the holy name, there are several things in that which require knowledge. So just chanting Hare Krishna alone is not enough. You should chant Hare Krishna with proper knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came not just to give chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, but also proper knowledge of Krishna consciousness. So these two, when these things work in combination, then you attain prema and you also attain vairagya, detachment from material desires, material concepts and desires. So when we chant the first verse of Shastakam, we should remember that chanting Hare Krishna and Vidya Vadu. So just like Radha Krishna, the consort of the holy name is Vidya.
The last question, Prabhu. So we hear a pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that one devotee who was keeping Bhagavad Gita without even knowing to read, but he was in ecstasy by understanding just by seeing the picture of Krishna as Parthasarathi. So in that case, he was an illiterate. So
yes, he was illiterate. He was an illiterate, but because he had 100% faith in the instruction of a spiritual master, all knowledge is revealed to him. Whatever is there in the Bhagavad Gita was revealed to him by Krishna in the heart. Because he had 100% faith. If somebody has 100% faith, it is all the Bhakti Shastras are automatically revealed in his heart. He knew. He was crying, right? Saying that, look how wonderful the Lord is. He has become the chariot driver of Arjuna. Look at the Lord's love for his devotee. Because he had 100% faith in the instruction of his spiritual master. Because of that, all the Vedic conclusions were revealed in his heart. That can happen, but that's an exception. That's an exception. The Prabhupada always would say, we should not think we are an exception. We should follow the standard path.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Whatever you were telling, I was having those thoughts, but wanted to confirm from you. So knowledge is important. See, a person who is not having 100% faith in spiritual master's word, he needs to read or hear from some pure devotees. Then only he can develop that faith. Correct, Prabhu?
Yeah.
So, thank you, Prabhu.
First of all, to find such a person who's got 100% faith is not easy.
Yes.
Very difficult. Very, very rare. So
yes,
for such a person, even if illiterate, whatever, just by chanting the holy name with that firm faith, they can attain all, everything is revealed within their heart. So,
Thank you,
but to say that bhakti is not dependent on anything else, it does not refer to this. It does not refer to Bhakti Shastras.
Okay.
Bhakti Shastras are also part of Bhakti only. They are separate elements there. It's not dependent on anything material, anything extraneous. Bhakti is dependent on Bhakti. That's why it's called Bhakti Shastra, right? It's not called something else. It's called Bhakti Shastra. When you're accomplished in Bhakti Shastra, you get Bhakti Shastri. The word Bhakti is there. It's not just. I mean, it is the Bhakti, the Shastra which is meant to a Shastra which is considered as Bhakti. That's what it means.
Thank you so
If you
much.
study Vedanta Sutra, it's not considered as Bhakti. If you study
Okay.
Bhagavatam, you consider it as Bhakti.
Not only sutras, Vedanta sutras.
Okay, let's put it like this. I mean, not put it. This is how it is. There are different levels of scripture. The lowest among the scriptures is the Kama Shastra. Above the Kama Shastra is the Artha Shastra. Above the Artha Shastras are the Dharma Shastras. Above the Dharma Shastras are the Moksha Shastras. Above the Moksha Shastras are the Bhakti Shastras. Like there's a classification of scripture also. The lowest is Kama Shastras. Then you have Artha Shastras. Then you have Dharma Shastras. Then you have Moksha Shastras. Then you have Bhakti Shastras.
So up to Moksha Shastras, should we consider as material? I mean,
Moksha Shastras is
Karma Kandya will be there.
No, it depends on. No, it's not every. Moksha Shastras don't have any Karma Kanda. They don't have Karma Kanda. Why? What Karma Kanda is involved in? What is it? In Moksha, they are trying to attain impersonal liberation. Right? There's no Moksha. There is no Karma Yoga. Okay, Jnana Yoga. We take it this. The Jnana Yogis take shelter of the Moksha Shastra. So there is no Karma Kanda involved there. In fact, the Jnana Yogis are all supposed to be sannyasis. Other than the sannyasis, nobody can practice Jnana Yoga. I mean, somebody working in a material job, it's not a, whatever they say, they cannot be Jnana Yogis. Jnana Yogis means those who have given up karma. They're Jnanis, they're sannyasis. And Shankaracharya said, unless you're a sannyasi, you cannot get moksha.
So expecting moksha is not material, it is spiritual. Is it, Prabhu?
It is spiritual, but it's selfish. There are two kinds of selfishness: material selfishness, spiritual selfishness. Material selfishness is, that's why our acharyas explain, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, you are sleeping on the lap of the witch Maya. What are the this thing, mukti and bhukti? Bhukti is selfishness which is centered around material enjoyment. And bhukti is bhukti. Bhukti is selfishness centered around material enjoyment. Mukti is selfishness centered around spiritual liberation. Both of them are selfish. Only bhakti is selfless. It is not material. Liberation is not material. Liberation is spiritual only, but selfish.
Thank you, Prabhu, for all your clarification. Hare Krishna.
Only one small point I just wanted to clarify. You said it's very difficult to get faith also 100%. Is it correct to understand that unless you have perfect sambandha gyan, you cannot get proper faith?
No, faith can be just by association of a great devotee can instantly get the faith. Also, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha. So if you associate with the sadhu who has got great faith, just by the association and trying to please that sadhu, the faith that the sadhu has can get transplanted into your heart.
So that can happen even if your sambandha gyan is not perfect, right?
What karma and gyan? It's not
No, your sambandha gyan. I'm saying if your sambandha gyan is not perfect, still that faith can come by associating with the sadhu, right?
Yeah, but to get that 100% faith, It's not easy. It's not like, okay, it's not like you meet a pure devotee and immediately you also become 100% pure, right? You will, depending on the proportion of your sincerity and your submissiveness and to what extent you're pleasing them, it depends on all these things. So you do get a substantial jump in your Shraddha. But whether, I mean, whether it's going to be 100%, that's not easy. Okay, let's put it like this, that until one reaches the stage of Prema Bhakti, or even let's say Bhava Bhakti, there is a component of faith involved there. There is some component of faith. But once one attains Bhava Bhakti or Prema Bhakti, I mean, technically, let's put it as Prema Bhakti. It's an experience. You don't need faith anymore, right? What do you need faith for? You're already experiencing it, right? So faith is needed until one has the experience. After that, so when we say we can get the faith, we actually need to understand what are we referring to there. Are we saying that we are, so when we attain Prema Bhakti, that's it. There's no need of any more faith. You already have an experience. Faith is needed when you don't have that experience, right? So slowly you would build up that faith and it intensifies to the extent after some time it becomes an experience. We have, it's not that we don't experience anything, we experience something, but we are not experience. I mean, we do experience Krishna consciousness, but we are not experience Prema. Therefore, faith is an essential element until one reaches the stage of Prema. Then faith is not a relevant parameter anymore. You already have experience. Where is the question of faith anymore? And Jiva Goswami says that the external symptom of faith is the 6 elements of surrender. We can test how much faith you have by seeing how well you are following the 6 items of surrender. Accepting things favorable, rejecting things unfavorable, firmly believing the Lord's protection, always depend on the mercy of the Lord, to have no interest separate from the interest of the Lord, it always feel weak and humble. To the extent that our faith is externally manifested in these 6 symptoms of surrender. Is it okay, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll resume again next Sunday. Thank you all very much. One check out the